Is this not Babylon the Great, that I myself have built for the royal house by my own strength and might, and for the glory of my majesty? Some famous words, of course, in ancient times from God's word. The king of Babylon, King Nebuchadnezzar, very proud of his accomplishments, and he wanted to boast. However, when we think of boasting, we may think of a person who's always thinks very highly of themselves. And so often we think of boasting as a negative thing. But the scriptures that we'll look at tonight, they show us that, yes, there is negative aspects to boasting that we need to keep away from. But as well, there are positive aspects of boasting. Whereas often we tend to think of just boasting as something that's always negative. But as we'll learn, that's not the case. And hence the title of this part, What Will You Boast About? Helping us see that there are good things to speak about, or boast about even. Jeremiah helps us understand this, and let's have a look at Jeremiah 9 verse 23. And here he talks about negative aspects when it comes to boasting. So obviously the people in his time, this is what some of them were doing. It says, this is what Jehovah says. Let not the wise man boast about his wisdom. Let not the mighty man boast about his mightiness. And let not the rich man boast about his riches. And so we see what was happening in Jeremiah's day. People, they were so proud of themselves. Maybe they thought they were better than everyone else in some ways or various ways, that they wanted to tell everyone else about it. Of course, we know this still happens in our day, doesn't it? And not only it can happen face to face, we could be somewhere where we overhear people boasting about themselves, but now we have social media, don't we? And could we just have our picture up on the screen, please? So when we think of boasting today, we often think of people want to tell others of what they have. Or what their lives are all about, how exciting their lives are. And as we see in this picture here, this person feels very proud of themselves and their material things. So of course, when we think about that verse of Jeremiah, that's not what Jehovah wants us to do, does he? And in fact, we may not boast about our material things, but maybe through such things as social media, we may want to tell everyone what an exciting life we have. We're invited to everything that's important. And we may just put picture after picture that we post on social media. And we may think, well, I'm helping people. We may think I'm just showing them, what they should be getting into. But not everyone can have that same sort of life, can they? And it can affect some people this way. One 19-year-old sister, of course, when she sees things that are shown on social media by people she knows, this is what she said. She says, I started feeling discontent when I saw others having all this fun on the weekends and I was at home bored. So doing such things and boasting, whether it's face-to-face or whether it's through social media, doesn't always help everyone, but it could actually make people feel, as his sister said, discontent. And so as Jehovah's people, we know that we're to be humble people and try hard not to boast about our own accomplishments. So let's leave the negative aspects of boasting there, and let's see some positive ways that we're able to boast. The next verse of Jeremiah chapter 9, verse 24. Let's read that. It says, but let the one boasting boast about this, that he has insight and knowledge of me, that I am Jehovah, the one showing loyal love, justice and righteousness in the earth. For in these things I take delight, declares Jehovah. So what's Jehovah telling us? Well, it's a positive way to boast. Talk about the good things that Jehovah God's given us. And we may find there's a few steps involved in this. For example, in that verse there, it talks about we need to have insight and knowledge of Jehovah God. So we need to learn these things from his word first of all, so that we're able to speak to others about Jehovah. And when we think of having insight and knowledge and understanding, by being proud of Jehovah's name, what it means, the loyal love that he shows, we're able to discuss things not just in the door-to-door public ministry, but perhaps with family members who are not Jehovah's people, neighbours, maybe people we work with or meet while we're at school. So it helps us to see it's important for us to talk about Jehovah. Jehovah wants us to do this. And we need to think about, well, what opportunities do I have to do this? And how can I be prepared? Well, one way we can be prepared is we think of our card that we have, our contact card. We may keep some of these on us so that when there's opportunity to speak, we can, and someone shows interest, we can leave a card like this with someone that's showing interest. Also, to help us keep our balance when it comes to boasting, a very good example is that of the Apostle Paul. How is this? Well, we think of the Apostle Paul's background before he was a Christian. Not only in a religious way, he was looked upon as being important, a Pharisee when it came to being in Israel at that time, but in the worldly way back then, he was considered a well-educated person. In fact, the scriptures mention that much of his education he got from a well-renowned lawyer by the name of Gamaliel. So how did this affect the Apostle Paul when he dealt with other Christians? Could he speak in a way that showed, well, I can speak better than you can. I can have extravagant words. Well, we'll see how he treated others. 1 Corinthians chapter 2. And when he spoke to the Corinthian congregation, did he show that, well, I've got all this worldly ability that maybe some of you don't have? First of all, in verse 1 of 1 Corinthians 2, he says, in talking to the Corinthians, says, But when I came to you, brothers, I did not come with extravagant speech or wisdom declaring the sacred secret of God to you. So he didn't use extravagant speech. But what he did use, he showed that he wanted to help them understand the sacred secrets from God's word. And also in verse 3, it says, And I came to you in weakness and in fear and with much trembling. So even though that he was well educated at that time, he still felt weak. And don't we often feel weak when we're speaking to others? But of course, Jehovah God was able to support him. Verse 4 mentions too that he wasn't using persuasive words of wisdom, but with a demonstration of spirit and power. And verse 5 says, so that your faith might be not in men's wisdom, but in God's power. So Paul showed true humility when he spoke to others, especially when he spoke to his brothers and sisters, so that by using proper speech that they understood, he was able to talk to them about the deeper things of God's word. So as Jehovah's people, we need to think about this quality of humility too, even when we're involved in speaking to people about the good news, as the Apostle Paul showed in his example. So thinking about this talk, what then will we boast about? Well, not ourselves personally, but of course, if we're going to boast, we're going to boast about Jehovah God.